Hello and welcome to this week's vlog. This week was the week commencing Monday the 18th of January to Friday the 22nd of January. This week was the first week on our new Midsummer Night's Dream timetable. So basically all that means is rather than having self-directed study on a Thursday afternoon, we now have it on a Monday afternoon. So that then we can have a Midsummer Night's Dream lesson on Thursday afternoon. On with this week's vlog. On Monday morning we had our usual lesson with the Year 2s. We looked at the technique of creating an art from an emerging news story. So the news story that we had was the statue of Cecil Rhodes, which is currently in place in one of the colleges in Oxford, and because Cecil Rhodes was part of the British Empire and he founded Rhodesia, which has now been known as Zimbabwe. Cecil Rhodes has been he's been hated across much of Africa, and a group of African students at the University College have decided to campaign to have the statue removed because they feel it's racist and offensive. We looked at that emerging story, found some quotes from the news articles, etc., and found that the themes really of the article are that the past is important to remember and that we have to learn from history, and that because it wasn't our generation it's not really our fault, but we have to learn from it. So we're not responsible for it, but we basically have to learn from it and say, right, we've got to put a foot down and say this was atrocious and we don't want it to happen again. And then we basically created our own little pieces about the article. Ours was a BBC News report from a week after the statue had been taken down. So in the future, basically as if the statue had been taken down. And we've basically come to the conclusion that in the report, the fact that the statue had been taken down had almost had a reverse effect, because whereas people before would just walk past the statue like completely oblivious because they walked past it so many times a day, since the statue had been taken down, which obviously it hasn't, but since the statue had been taken down, people were now stopping to look at what was once there and wonder why it was taken down. So basically we came to the conclusion that if the statue was to be taken down, then it would have a reverse effect on what everybody was really campaigning against. So that was the end of our lesson with the Year 2s really. It was very interesting to see how we could create art from an emerging story and how quickly a thought could be provoked. Tuesday morning I had directed study. I basically finished the first part of Task 4, where I had chosen my own soundtrack for our production, and then also started the second part of Task 4, where I looked at costume ideas for each character and basically costumed the performance how I would costume it really. But like I say, those are Task 4 and they can be found elsewhere on this WordPress site. Tuesday afternoon we had a read through of the script for Midsummer Night's Dream. I believe it has been recorded and videoed, so I'll try and get that up on the WordPress site as soon as possible really. The read through went really well. Everybody's starting to get to grips with character and setting and everything and what is actually going to happen. And we all came out of the read through feeling really buzzed really and ready to just give it our best shot and smash it, because we all know that we can make an awesome production out of it really. So that was Tuesday. Okay, on Wednesday morning we had directed study again. I finished off Task 4, looking at costume ideas and everything, and Task 4 can be found on WordPress, as I said in Tuesday's vlog. But and then Wednesday afternoon we had our usual lesson with the MTs, and looked at auditions really, and the contemporary side of the auditions and speeches. But first we looked at kind of auditions as a whole and what people are looking for. So the main thing that they want to see is to see if we can act and if we have confidence. The main things really, if you know what all the words mean in the script, then you'll be fine. Know why the character is saying the lines and the purpose of the speech is always key, because then people can, like, once you've done your speech, they can then say, can you do it as if you're rowing a boat or pushing a trolley around Sainsbury's, and they give you an emotion as well. So like you could be pushing a trolley around Sainsbury's, other supermarkets are available, and you could be really angry or you could be overjoyed or whatever, and you just have to do that speech that way to see if you can act. The main thing really, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. I've always lived by that. So yeah, make a first impression, make a good first impression, because that first impression gets you places and can also hold you back. And finally as well, the audition is a test of character and confidence. They want to see what you're like. It's not a memory test. If you just go in and read the lines, then you're going to look a bit pants really. Yeah, and then we looked at actors who transform and actors who don't transform, because a lot of actors transform into a character and some actors don't. So actors that do transform, weirdly they tend to be mainly people that work with Tim Burton really, so Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter. So like literally every film they're in, they play a different character, and that character has a certain persona and a certain costume and certain just whole personality and identity really. And then we also looked at actors who don't transform. So Hugh Grant and Will Smith and Morgan Freeman really, they play different characters, but at the end of the day you look at them and go, it's still Will Smith playing that character. It's not as in with Johnny Depp. You don't look at him and go, that's Captain Jack Sparrow or that's Willy Wonka. You look at Will Smith and go, that's Will Smith playing Agent J, or that's Will Smith playing the Fresh Prince, who's technically Will Smith anyway, or that's Will Smith playing Hancock. Yeah, and then really we just looked at some speeches and started to rehearse them really. So I carried on looking at Robert Sideway's speech from Our Country's Good, which I mentioned in last week's vlog. So yeah, that was Wednesday really. On Thursday morning we basically did the same as what we did in Wednesday's lesson with the contemporary monologues, but looking at Shakespeare. So we had a look at some Shakespeare monologues. I had a look at my Shakespeare monologue that I'm pretty certain I'm going to do, which is the Henry IV Part 1 monologue. I know you all and will a while uphold the unyoked humour of your idleness, yet herein will I imitate the sun. And that one. Yeah, so I will get around to learning that for auditions, etc. So we looked at that in greater detail, and I found that by pulling it apart and writing it how it should be written rather than in the rhythm, because it's written in iambic pentameter. So you've got, I know you all and will a while uphold the unyoked humour of your idleness, and then like that's in iambic pentameter. But if you're actually going to say it how you would say it in an audition, then obviously being one sentence it would be, I know you all and will a while uphold the unyoked humour of your idleness. So that was really interesting, because then you see exactly where the pauses and everything come. And then yeah, we researched a bit more into the monologue. I looked into the actual modern day English translation of the monologue, just so that by getting your head around what the modern meaning is, you then can feel more towards the character and present it how you wish to present it. I feel that he's going to start by being a bit of a Prince Harry character really. So he's in the tavern with his mates and just sort of looking there going, look, I know you all and will a while uphold the unyoked humour of your idleness. but like by the end of it, he then has realised that he's going to have to wake up to the fact and become king at some point. So he's doing his best to prove them all wrong and say that he can be royalty and he can be a worthy king to rule the kingdom. So yeah, that was Thursday morning's lesson. Thursday afternoon we had our Midsummer Night's Dream lesson, and we all split up. I was one of those who went with the fairies and the other characters who speak in a northern accent, and just did some research into the accent really, because we don't want a general northern accent, we want a pinpoint Manchester accent. So looking at people like Terry Christian, because Terry Christian's from Greater Manchester, but also being a radio DJ has to have a lot of emphasis and excitement in his voice, whereas the Manchester accent is very dull and boring. And I looked at some other people as well, like Nick Grimshaw and Paddy McGuinness and people like that, but then discovered that they're actually from Bolton and Lancashire rather than Manchester, so therefore we need a definite Manchester accent rather than a Bolton accent really. So that sort of opened my eyes up to the sort of accent I'm after, and yeah, I will develop that in the weeks to come. Okay, so that's the end of this week's vlog. Thank you very much for watching. As I say every week, the vlog will have a different 80s theme. This week it has been the 1980 film Blues Brothers. That is why I'm in the Blues Brothers uniform, and in the background you have heard the Blues Brothers soundtrack. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. I hope you had a good week, and cheers.